Explained by the Billy Meier contacts, mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more, compiled by David Chance, revised July 2, 2025.
Future Earth Humans Part 4. See also Gilgamesh. See also Hyperborea, Hyperboreans. See also Ica Stones. See also Longskulls. See also Men in Black. See also Nazca Lines. See also Nokodemion. See also Ptah. See also Quetzalcoatl. See also Rods. See also Starchild Skulls. See also Teos Caves Metal Library. See also Tunguska Event 1908. See also UFOs Flying Saucers.
Contact Report 33.
The events in Bermuda and the Bermuda Triangle are traced back to completely natural things. For about 2 decades, these events, which so far remain inexplicable for the terrestrial human beings, were additionally exploited in other forms by certain religiously dependent and unclearly working groups of ufologists who attributed the events to extraterrestrials. For them, these events were a found meal to feed credulous individuals with untrue and dishonest statements by inventing fantastically dark, satanic extraterrestrial powers, which are supposed to be responsible for the events in the Bermuda Triangle. What could be more obvious in terms of religion than this measure? Because, like the unreal religions themselves, ufology had to have the form of a Satan in order to keep its believers in check. Since ufology was built on a religious basis and only functions in this form, it inevitably had to create 2 powers in this respect, namely good and evil bad, black and white, divine and satanic. The events in the Bermuda Triangle thus correspond to a purely speculative form if they are associated with extraterrestrial intelligences.
Contact Report 34.
We must never violate the personal sphere of a life form and thereby act against its own will.
Well, Semjase, then I would like to raise some other problems in this context. Do you know anyone by the name of Seth? Whether it is a man or a woman, I unfortunately do not know.
A very strange name, but no, it is unknown to me. Why do you ask?
That is just as strange, Semjase, as the thing with Gloria Lee. The same person claims in the same letter to Mr. Jacob that he was connected to an alien life form about 10 years ago. Whether this was in purely telepathic form or in material form, I unfortunately do not know. Anyway, this person, if his or her statements are correct, must have experienced certain things via this life form, which obviously refer to us. At least Mr. Jacob said so, because in the letter there is talk of you and of me, so to speak, and that in 1975 I should appear here in Switzerland as a contact person. So this is what he was told about by this extraterrestrial life form about 10 years ago. What do you say to this now?
He is a man at the age of 41 with the name Alois Rickenbach. I told you that we must not disclose the secret of the personality of a life form unless they wish to disclose the secret themselves. It is now 14 years since this man, who wrote the letter to Mr. Jacob, was connected in a primary telepathic and personal manner with a life form called C8. It was a life form from Alpha Centauri, who at that time expeditioned the Earth for 11 months. In this context, Seth and the man met unexpectedly and made friends, as you call it. In the course of the 11 months, Seth enlightened the man about different things and facts, and also explained to him the coming of you and me, because Seth was well informed about this time viewing. But we do not know each other and have never seen or spoken to one another. Seth also learned many things through the man and came to the conviction that the Earth humans had to be told various facts. Thus, he instructed the man to make known certain facts concerning extraterrestrial life, etc., to his fellow humans. And since Seth knew many events of the future, He also knew about your and my existence and explained it to him with the wish to spread this knowledge. But the man was afraid of this step and explained to Seth that he was not up to the task. Disappointed, Seth withdrew and left the earth again, and so the contact with the man came to an end.
Then you could somehow influence him so that he at least contacts us again.
I am not allowed to do that, because that would mean a forced intervention on his own freedom of decision-making.
Then not. But how is it possible that you were able to find out all these things in such a short time?
This is only possible through our analyzers, which I am not allowed to describe to you officially. Certainly, there exist 2 small stations deep in the sea in the Bermuda Triangle, which are also inhabited for 3 years by extraterrestrial intelligences from our Federation. However, those are actually very distant descendants of the former inhabitants of the continent. But they are of absolutely peaceful nature and do not endanger any earthly life forms. Their spaceflight-capable flying devices are also able to navigate in water and can dive to great depths. That is necessary because their stations are located deep in the sea. Very often, they can also be observed in those areas, while they surface from the water and vanish in the atmosphere. However, they have factually nothing to do with the events of the Bermuda Triangle, which is unfortunately claimed regarding them.
Do you have a better memory?
It is probably much superior to yours, but my power in this regard is not unlimited either. For this reason, I am not able to transmit our conversations, etc., from my memory to you, but I am dependent on the apparatuses which make the knowledge word for word recognizable again from my subconsciousness and transmit it to you in thought form. No material form of life has an unlimited power of memory. This is only attained in purely spiritual forms when the spirit can get rid of the material body, no longer needs it, and is closer to the creative being than to life. Ha 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 ha! I find that a funny phrase. Steal God's time.
Then at least you have something to smile about.
Ha 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 ha! But that is really funny. I will learn this phrase if you will allow me.
After all, it's not my doing, and it's a human common good, so to speak. You are also a human being, and so you also belong to this bunch.
Contact Report 36.
As I have just learned, a misunderstanding has crept in between my daughter and you, which please do not pay any further attention to. This is of no further importance, and it clearly shows you that we are not immune to errors either. We have voluntarily assigned ourselves to this task, to which we are incumbent. Here on the Earth, endeavoring to transmit very much worth knowing to the Earth humans, and also bringing, together with you, a valuable teaching as well as knowledge and wisdom. This, too, is warmth and love, and these correspond to much more than we are actually creationally based obliged to.
Look here, this apparatus, it's an area analyzer. If I turn it on now, like this, what do you see now?
Man, that's Mr. Jacob as he lives and breathes.
Sure, you can see he's very busy. But now look here on this scale. Here the thought-swinging waves are recorded,
This is a real wire mess.
but from which we can recognize all values. Look, this figure here, for example, springs from Mr. Jacob's subconscious. If I enlarge it now, so what do you see now?
Girls, these are real pictures.
Sure, and what do you see on it?
Yes, that is a day. How can I know? I am going crazy. How do I know this is a day? Man, girl, this is the next Wednesday, and this is a time. If I decipher it correctly, then the time to be seen is Wednesday, the 22nd of October, 1975, exactly 11:03 hours. Is that right?
Sure, what next?
Hans Jacob reaches for the phone and sets a number. Man, he's on the phone with me. He wants to come to me around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. However, this time varies somewhat.
You decipher and recognize the facts very accurately, because exactly your findings are transmitted by the analyzer. Mr. Jacob does not yet know anything about these coming events, for he has not yet become aware of them. But his subconscious already knows what is to come and is now working in this direction. And as you can see, we are able to record these facts through our analyzers and read them. That's the way we oversee and monitor, and so get very accurate data about all the things that matter to us. In the same way, I have also learned that our statements regarding your influence on certain events in your own group are questioned. So I did not look to the future, but only used our analyzers for these things and monitored the subconscious of different persons in your group.
Fantastic. With these things here, nothing is hidden from you at all.
That would actually be the case if we used them without interruption. But since this is not the case, and we still have a lot to learn, we use these devices only for overseeing and monitoring purposes. Everything else that is necessary is worked out in the normal way that is also given to you, namely in the way of the thought work that corresponds to the normal course of evolution. But since this way requires that mistakes are made in order to gain knowledge, we are also subject to wrong decisions, wrong actions and misjudgments and mistakes, etc., just like the terrestrial human being.
That makes sense to me. But may I see something else on the analyzer because…
Sure, you can simply hold your hand on this surface here. Then this globe will rotate here until it reaches the desired place, until it is recorded under this needle here. If you then put your hand on this plate here, you can call up any desired life form on this map enlargement, according to your thoughts, which are transmitted through this receiver here into the apparatus. So you know exactly where this life form is at the moment. If you then touch this button here, then the life form you want appears in this screen, and next to it, the analyses that you now know and are even able to decipher. Maybe sometimes I let myself be guided suddenly by my feelings in certain things. That must be the case, because I have made various factors of your own, Billy's myself. But somehow I feel quite comfortable with it. And now I know that emotions don't always have to be switched off and are very valuable for certain decisions. Perhaps my people have put too much emphasis on controlling their emotions and thereby expropriated themselves of something.
Contact Report 37.
For quite some time so far, unknown to us, intelligences have been visiting the Earth. It was not until 1961 that we became aware of them, when they seized 2 Earth humans for study purposes, brought them into their spaceship, and subjected them to a physical-chemical analysis. Note, see Betty and Barney Hill. This is not just one method, but a variety of them, by which mixtures of substances can be separated at will, quantitatively and qualitatively, whereafter the chemical compounds can be determined quantitatively and qualitatively in their structure and composition according to their characteristics. Very refined and ingenious methods, combined with an equally ingenious technology, allow these analyses to also be carried out with living life forms, without them being harmed in any manner. To our knowledge, this is still unknown on the Earth, but widely used and widespread among certain space-traveling races. However, they use this method only in connection with telenautics, that is hypnosis, whereby the test or examination objects have no conscious recognition of such tests or examinations. That means that they lack all memory for this time period, by which I refer to the time of the examination or test. The recollection is only establishing itself deep in the subconscious, which is why it can also only be released from there. That, however, is not feasible through the consciousness, but only through a strong hypnotic counterblock, which we call a refractive block. Our examinations in the year 1961 revealed that there was nothing to fear from these space-traveling intelligences. They are humanoid in form, and in fact only did research. Their forms are absolutely human, though their body dimensions are somewhat different from ours. Their size varies between 126 and 163 centimeters. They originate from the planetary and star system Zeta Reticuli, as I already explained to you. Their spacecrafts are similar to our beam ships and are extremely well equipped and very suitable for space travel. The atmosphere of their homeworld is very similar to the earthly atmosphere, so that they can breathe it without great difficulties. However, they are provided with close-fitting filter suits, which offer them protection in a number of respects. To the human beings of Earth, I would say that they are similar to the suits given to the fantasy figures Batman and Superman in the comics, except that in this case, the face and the whole head are completely wrapped in the suit, whereby the area around the eyes is secured by viewing and protective glasses built into and integrated into the suit. No doubt you are familiar with the fantasy films of French production about a criminal named Fantomas. If you look at this fantasy figure and replace its eye area with dark protective lenses, you have a pretty good representation of the Zeta Reticuli intelligences in their suits.
Yes, I know that figure from television, but how do you have cognizance of it?
Occasionally, I have fun watching such programs, which after all you broadcast through your television equipment. They are peaceful humanoids. Of course, they differ from us only in their anatomy as well as in their size and skin color.
With which life forms do you have contact?
With forms from your time level, thus from your present-day dimension, because these life forms are not yet capable of the change of dimensions in the manner we are.
Contact Report 38.
Indeed, we also are often subject to mistakes.
A real vision describes a certain form of a guided vision. It is a form of vision that is dominated by many intelligences, including the Giza intelligences. By these arbitrarily provocable and steerable visions, different extraterrestrials, and also we, influence life forms in order to obtain certain impressions for them in this way, which are instructive to them and which they are to make accessible by spreading also to others, in order to also purposefully affect the surroundings. These steerable visions are so massively realistic that the influenced life form becomes convinced that it has experienced the vision as reality. That's exactly why we call it real vision, because it seems so real. Every experience experienced through this real vision lasts as long as it would take in reality. Such real visions do not only last seconds or minutes, but they last as long, in time, as the real experiences would take.
That's fantastic. This means that a human being can have an experience that is in reality not an experience at all, but arises only from a fictitious vision, but that he or she is not able to distinguish this vision from reality, and thus regards the illusory experience as the truth of an experience.
Certainly, that's the exact description.
But now you said that these real visions last exactly as long as the real experience takes in time. So a lot of time could flow by and many hours could pass?
Sure, even days, weeks, or months.
Contact Report 39.
You Earth humans still have certain characteristics that are no longer peculiar to our race.
What characteristics do you mean with that?
You call it sense of adventure. Sorry, I needlessly excited myself. I felt as though you had not considered the facts regarding the speed. I will probably never understand your kind, but you Earth humans are all a bit strange in this manner.
You mean because of the sense of adventure and such?
Sure, it is something completely foreign to me. Maybe I do actually let myself be guided too much by reason in certain things, without considering, at the same time, the intellectual concerns in a proper measure. It may well be because of our high level of development that we have a different nature in such concerns. With certainty, our somewhat finer dimension also exerts a certain influence on it. Sometime, I will have to talk with my people about it, because I think that a different forming in these things would be of use for us.
I know from Ask It and You that 91% of the extraterrestrials visiting the Earth are purely human-like human life forms, albeit with some deviations from our appearance. Through Ask It, I have also seen various such intelligences outside of and far away from the Earth, such that were rather gigantic in stature and reached more than 4.5 meters, while the smallest dwarfs and short ones were 40 centimeters tall. But they were all really recognizable human forms. Some looked like Yetis, others like Cyclopes, miniature Goliaths, etc. Two forms, which I have also never seen on the Earth, were completely different, however. Both were more animal-like than human-like. These were, thus, two forms that belong to the remaining 9% and are, nevertheless, non-human-like human beings. Well, then I have another question. Can you tell me how many extraterrestrials of a good form had contact with Earth humans since ages ago?
Very many extraterrestrial intelligences came to the Earth from the entire expanse of the Milky Way for thousands of years. For several centuries, however, there have only been very few, and only a few of these tried to pursue communications with the Earth humans, or even come into closer contact with these. Mainly, the only ones who did so were those who were interested in showing new and better, or simply future ways to the human beings of Earth. On the whole, these intelligences were very distant descendants of your indirect ancestors. And only in very rare cases were these different forms of life, but they were still, to a large degree, of a human-like, human form. I can say the exact answer to your question, but with the fact that of all the extraterrestrial visitors to the Earth, only 0.57% of those entered into contact with Earth humans. Excluded from these are those who traveled from afar, from the depths of the universe, who became resident on the Earth in ages past, and who entered into the earthly history of humankind. Mount Shasta is an old volcanic mountain with a partially still unexplored area in America, or more precisely, in Northern California. The mountain is very rocky and extremely difficult to climb. In the interior of the mountain itself is a small city, which is inhabited by descendants of extraterrestrials, and which, here and there, also receives a visit from their space brothers from outer space. It is a very majestic race, peaceful and good, but which anxiously strives not to be discovered by Earth humans. The entrance to their very deeply underground city is well camouflaged under the eastern mountain peak, and it is impossible for Earth humans to find it. But if Earth humans are ever found in their proximity, then they are made imperceptibly unable to move or distracted by the beam weapons that most of the city dwellers carry on themselves for security reasons. Their golden spaceships of a spherical form, for they master spaceflight, can sometimes be seen when they do not protect these from view. Human beings of this race are very well proportioned in their appearance. Their hair is mostly natural blonde, long and curly, which is very fit for their graceful Hyperborean nature. Sometimes, despite their shyness of Earth humans, they go into their villages to conduct unrecognized bartering with them, after which they depart and flee in a great hurry. However, if Earth humans come too close to them. But Mount Shasta is not the only place where this race lives. For already at very early times, they divided themselves into 3 smaller peoples, with the other 2 living unrecognized and deep underground on the Aleutian Islands and in Alaska. The whole population amounts to just about 700 human beings.
That is fantastically interesting, and now a few things dawn on me. But you have just said something about their appearance, from which I could infer that with this race living underground, it concerns very distant descendants of the real Hyperboreans.
You infer correctly.
Man, that is incredible. Then these would, indeed, be the descendants or distant descendants of those who, 180,000 or 190,000 years ago, carried out the actual decolonization in the form that can be regarded then as the early history of the current human race, at least for the white race. Among them, then, must have also been the Ishwish, who gave Enoch great wisdom. Methuselah went to this one in a later incarnation of Enoch, and Noah was later commissioned by this one's guardian angels to build that ark with which he actually landed then on Ararat.
In that dimension, the world is already suspended in the distant future, but the inhabitants on the Earth of that time very rarely penetrate from that.
The world there, note, one of 3 worlds existing in a dimension which was previously accessible through a naturally occurring dimension gate, which no longer exists, in the Bermuda Triangle, is about 870 years ahead of your time. Thus, the human beings are also accordingly developed in their technology and have their own beam ships, with which they arrive at your Earth every now and then. The Earth human is a descendant of a human form from the depths of the universe that is very highly developed in every manner. Accordingly, he or she is also highly developed in his or her proportional form. In this connection, he or she is on an equal footing with our own race, which is already approximately 30 million years further developed. It is strange, but I feel aching emotions in me for you, Billy.
It is very painful to me.
I am very sorry I was wrong with my comments.
I am very sorry.
My own comments were very inconsiderate. You make me seriously agitated.
Soon, we glide out of the airlock into free space and rush onto the moon of the third world, where the human beings of the future have already built their stations and live there.
The human beings of this dimension and time have, indeed, become much more peaceful than those on your world in your time, but they are still barbaric and quite aggressive, so they would force us to land, which would be very unpleasant for us.
Beam ships? Girl, then these elves already master space travel.
Sure, they also have about 500 years more development behind themselves than the Earth humans of your time, which I already said.
There is now the possibility that, on occasion, I will have to walk on the Earth, protected by a vibration device.
Contact Report 40.
You were very sad, and inside you cried bitter tears. It makes me feel pain inside. I could not find peace, and I tried. I feel embedded in what you call happiness. I feel great joy in me.
Contact Report 41.
The first question concerns your offspring. How do you do that if you want offspring? Wait a minute, Semjase. You have to bear in mind that human beings are very misguided about these things. This is especially due to sectarians who work especially on UFOs and stamp the extraterrestrials as sent by God and angels, thereby glorifying them. In their boundless fantasy, they then ascribe to them a spiritual almost perfection or total perfection, through which they are to bypass the normal path of procreation and procreate the offspring in a spiritual way. This idiocy rests on the one hand in the religious assertion that Emmanuel was conceived in a spiritual way by the dear God. On the other hand, it rests in the fact that the normal and natural act of procreation is an unclean and even animal concern, for which the explanation is again to be found in the assertion of the spiritual procreation of Emmanuel.
We procreate our descendants in the same natural way as is that of terrestrial humans and all other material forms of life in all universes. Man and woman, male and female, mate to commit a sexual intercourse. This form of procreation is a completely natural process in all material universes, which is also normally carried out everywhere in this manner. A man sleeps with a woman, mates with her, and fertilizes her, so a procreation takes place. In a normal form, this is done by bringing the bodies together, which means that man and woman snuggle up to each other, unite in love, and the man inserts his procreative organ into the woman's entrance opening, which takes in the semen that begets, is fertilized, and thereby develops new life. Any other natural form of procreation does not exist, apart from exceptions where, in certain circumstances, a different, unnatural form of procreation takes place. But this is a very rare occurrence. This also applies to artificial insemination, which is usually only used in extreme cases to preserve the species. On the whole, however, the procreation of the offspring is oriented towards the normal sexual intercourse, for only this form corresponds to naturalness and the creational laws and recommendations.
But then how can a woman have offspring if her spouse is not fertile?
Our people, and also many other races in the universe, have two possibilities in such cases. The first possibility is to fertilize the man concerned. But this possibility also exists with a woman. However, where a man cannot be made fertile, there is the possibility of mating with another fertile man.
Does that mean that the woman then sleeps with another man? That would give us earthlings a big stink, because here somewhat different views prevail. What kind of man is that? And what about dear jealousy and adultery? Don't the husbands and wives go crazy?
You think correctly, the woman will be mated to by a strange man. But he himself must be attached to a woman, that is married, as it is called with you. This is a law of order. According to the laws of order, this form of mating does not constitute adultery because it is an act in the sense of creation. Jealousy cannot therefore already appear because these people are aware of the laws of creation and therefore also obey them. It is also important that all partners reach a decision on such a mating in complete and mutual agreement.
I find that a quite ingenious solution. But can any man be consulted for such an act of procreation?
No, it is not like that. The man to be chosen for this act must have already conceived the limit of his own offspring. Furthermore, his overall evolution has to correspond to a certain high level.
This means, therefore, that not everyone should simply be responsible for this task. Many men would want such a job with us because sexual satisfaction and degeneration is unfortunately still very important for us.
I am aware of that. With our race, and also with many others, however, these forms of thinking have long been forgotten. Today, this is a very honorable and good task.
Which probably offers very pleasant aspects, if I imagine it like that.
Sure, that is also actually the case.
Sure, because you just told me that you find sexual activity pleasant. Are you ashamed of that?
The only reason I did not want to talk about it was because I did not think it was important. I am not ashamed to talk about it.
But this is important for earthworms, because many believe that extraterrestrials are different in every respect. So it would be good if you would report a bit.
If that is so good, these factors are probably described in brief outlines because they are the same for all human life forms bound to a body. When man and woman sleep together, their thoughts move in quite imaginative paths, which trigger emotions in various forms, whereby physical and mental stimulus zones are set in motion and fill the body, as well as the thoughts and feelings with pleasure. These stimuli are very pleasant to call and fulfill the life form with all sorts of desires and disinhibitions, which every life form needs, and thus loosens up in its outermost form. This is the case with any kind of human life form, including ours. It has been a little over 2 centuries since I was married. The marriage with my husband, however, was still childless, because we only wanted to have offspring when he would have returned from a multi-year expedition to a newly discovered galaxy. So he went on an expedition with 7 crew members and 2 small ships. Only one, however, returned after 11 years. But the ship with my husband suffered inexplicable damage and fell into a sun. So I lost my husband, to whom I had only been married for 7 years. On the other hand, it is the case with us that a man or woman is still considered single, as you say, when the spouse leaves life and no offspring has yet been conceived.
I would be very interested in how a birth is actually going on with you.
After conception, the woman carries the child, which has only just to develop, for 9 months in her body. Then the birth takes place in the same manner, as this is also known to the Earth humans.
This means that there are no differences in this case. The women have pain and contractions during childbirth, etc., like us?
Sure, there is no difference, at least if you ignore the fact that Earth humans often contain their pain at birth because they are already very effeminate.
Then the women will let the pain of childbirth endure all over them?
Of course, this is the natural birth, which also influences the mother giving birth and the offspring, and accordingly influences the manner of thinking in a positive and progressive wise.
Does that mean a woman should give birth without painkillers?
Sure, because only this form is natural and brings great benefits for mother and child.
I get it. There are consciousness-based and physical benefits anyway, if I understand correctly. How many years have you matured physically and consciously?
If you think of the fertility, then the answer is 12 years, because with this age, every human form is capable of producing offspring. Up to the age of 70, however, marital abstinence is usually practiced in order to make very strong efforts in intellectual and consciousness-based, as well as in activity and training-based matters, in order to be able to educate oneself. This is also the minimum age, usually, that marriage is considered. The pure body maturity is completed at 18 and a half years. Consciousness-based maturity is also attained at 18 years of age, while the period of education-based activities, etc., is completed at around 70 years of age, which does not mean, however, that learning and evolution are stopped as a result. It is not the case with us, as it is, unfortunately, the case on the Earth, that a person rarely acquires further knowledge after his or her regular schooling times. Because with us, the further training in material and consciousness-based form continues during the entire further lifespan.
Well, how is love now with you? I mean, especially between man and woman.
But a true love between man and woman is a very special creation energy sensation through which man and woman come together. In contrast to the mostly only emotional love, as it still prevails among terrestrial humans, our love is of a fine spiritual-based nature and very pure, profound, and therefore lifelong lasting. But between man and woman, and in general between the human beings of our race, there is always only open and honest, fine spiritual-based love, which is only restricted in a controlling manner in certain cases when the situation requires it.
I see, that is very clear. So, you are really highly developed human beings and not robots, and also, in regard to true love, you are ahead of humankind on the Earth by enormous developmental periods. But how do you educate your children?
This is the task of the parents. On the other hand, however, there is control by the High Council, according to whose rules training and order, etc., also find their correctness through the creation energy teaching. In this form, marriages are also entered into, which is why we do not know divorces, as is unfortunately so often the case with you on the Earth.
Do you not have marital quarrels then? I mean, disputes and disagreements?
Do you think of us as super life forms?
Certainly not, I ask, only because this would be interesting for the earthworms of my level and also otherwise to know.
When two life forms live together in an alliance, differences of opinion inevitably arise. However, these do not have to ausarten into quarrels, as is so often the case with the Earth human beings. So without exception, there are also differences of opinion in our marriages, and it would be very abnormal if it were not so. Also with us, like everywhere else, all life forms are varied in their evolution, so never two exactly alike poles are found together. If it were different, it would mean a flattening and abolition of evolution. Thus, two differently directed poles must always come together if evolution is to come about. This means, however, that these two different poles constantly rub against each other so that two different opinions collide, and therefore differences of opinion must arise for the purpose of evolution. This is an irrevocable law of the evolution, to which we and all other life forms in all universes are assigned.
You also know everything.
Remember, I am still learning. I am having fun with you.
Contact Report 42.
I was very worried about you, and therefore still call you at this hour. It was very hard for me to wait until you had finished your work.
What happens to you with the deceased? That is to say, with the lifeless bodies? Do you somehow shrink them into coffins and transport them to the next sun? Or do you bury them as you would us, because they are simply buried 1 meter 80 deep into the earth in cemeteries? Or do you somehow cremate them? Or do you just totally eliminate them?
Earth burial is just as familiar and customary to us as it is on the Earth. For this purpose, we have special storage facilities away from the inhabited areas. From ancient times, we have also maintained cremation for very, very rare cases. However, when such a cremation is desired. Apart from burial in the ground, however, the total elimination of the dead bodies is not usual. Burials are nevertheless things of individual requests, so one or the other form of burial can be used.
But what is it like now? Should one rather let oneself be roasted, or better prefer the earth burial, or maybe even a total elimination?
But to your question, it has to be said that the burial of the deceased is the natural form, because it has been like this since the your beginning. But everything speaks against a total elimination, etc., because the loss of certain fluidal powers, which will persist for some time in the lifeless body, etc., must not be ignored, which of course become volatile through combustion or total elimination.
My next question concerns the transplantation of body parts or organs. We have been transplanting body parts from the dead to living bodies, that is to say, to living people, such as hearts, kidneys, and eyes, etc., for years. What is your opinion about this? Should one do this or not?
This is the type of development of the still primitive science, which, with a few exceptions, always has very little success. For example, our scientists also work with transplantation of eyes and other organs. However, these are then transferred to them from the cultivated, living material of the particular life forms. Therein, they have achieved complete successes. However, eyes, limbs, and organs of all kinds are cultivated and transplanted by our scientists because the natural human eye, limbs, and organs, and the whole cell tissue, etc., cannot be replaced by any technology. So body organs as well as limbs are not removed from the living or dead in order to be transferred to the living.
What do you do then when someone needs a new limb or organ?
We have the possibility of a complete regeneration, where this possibility no longer exists. However, we replace what is necessary with organs grown artificially from the cell tissue of the person concerned, which survive the lifetime of the body with complete certainty. This possibility is also applied to lost limbs, etc.
This means no transplantation in the sense that is now possible on the Earth.
Certainly.
Do you live on your Pleiades also in houses as we have them?
The question is illogical. Certainly, we also live in houses, only we name these buildings differently. No, we do not live in the same structures, because our construction forms are all round, in flat round form with extensions, such as my jet ship, or they are spherical round. Mass housing opportunities, as you know them, are not given with us, because all the
By this I mean apartment blocks and skyscrapers, etc., in which people live as if in herds like in silos, crammed together quite densely if possible, so that they even step on each other's ears standing up.
No, these forms of housing are not what we have, because all forms of life are entitled to open freedom, which also applies to living in homes. Each family has its own home, which is built communally and needs no compensation, as this is usual with you.
You mean mortgage or rent?
Of course, such things are a thing of the past, because we have had no means of payment for a very long time. Thus, even the communally established homes do not require any remuneration. These homes are, however, not arranged in the same way as yours are, where they are built on top of each other. They are all rather single in a large country square of 100 by 100 meters, formed as a garden or meadow or park, etc., with many flowers, shrubs and trees and many other plants, as well as vegetables, etc. Only the structures of the villages and cities are of a different kind and also built for a larger number of people. In this respect, however, no comparison can be made with the Earth.
Man, oh man, that requires an immense amount of land.
Sure, but with us all inhabited worlds are made arable to the last possibility. Every usable area is cultivated and fertilized. Only areas that could not be cultivated were occupied with larger and several types of buildings at the same time, with buildings that you would call factories, with surveillance systems and beamship ports, etc.
And who works in the factories?
robots and androids under the leadership and control of a few men and women, but who perform only technical surveillance and control tasks.
What does the rest of Pleiadian humanity do? Are they twiddling their thumbs and lying on their ears?
All have their tasks, on the planet itself as well as on other worlds.
Good. How many people live in such a splendid home, which almost seems like a paradise, if I can imagine it so?
There are never more than 5 persons, 2 parents, and a maximum of 3 children, because 3 offspring is the limit, which is why we do not suffer from an overpopulation problem like the Earth humans. No, with us, the Geranisa, mother-in-law, abstains from all interference in the interests of their married children.
But now to something else. Do you also know music, literature, and art, and do you have appropriate schools?
Sure, these things are common to all human life forms in the universe. We also have appropriate schools for these things, but they can only be attended by really talented people who will later work in these things for the benefit of all. The interested parties are judged according to the presence of talent and admitted to the schools, so only real talents are admitted. There are therefore no such things as are customary on Earth, namely that performers appear in public who make ear-hurting sounds.
How does your music sound, and what kind of instruments do you have?
I cannot describe the music to you, because it would sound completely strange to you. Likewise, the instruments would be alien to you.
Where do you get the money from when you walk around our Earth shielded from vibrations and buy something somewhere?
For these purposes, we look on Earth for precious metals and gemstones with our search devices, which we mine in very small quantities with our devices and sell to buyers, who compensate us with earthly money as an exchange value, which we then exchange into the required currencies as required.
Contact Report 43.
Sit down here now, I want you to. So, now hold your head against this. Yes, that is right. Now close your eyes for a moment. That's it. That was good. How do you feel?
You're driving me crazy. What are you doing? This weird swarm of mayflies has disappeared from my skull, as well as the stupid poking and hammering. I feel much better. What did you do?
The explanations would go too far. In short, I just improved your strength a little.
Aha, some kind of power boost.
Sure, I have infused you with a very tiny unit of primal cosmic energy.
Aha, I understand that, although this process is a mystery to me.
You shouldn't bother about that, because the process is purely technical, combined with biophysical forms.
Contact Report 44.
It is warmer and more comfortable in here. Outside is so very cold.
Aha, another quality I do not know about you yet. So far, I always thought that only I would freeze here.
All life forms suffer from too much cold, when this is not exactly a life-necessary moment for them.
Is your mother actually still alive?
But of course. She lives together with father in his spaceship. My mother is indeed a very wonderful woman.
Contact Report 45.
Can you get me? Is this money enough here?
That is D-Mark. Where did you get these organized again? That should do it.
Quetzalcoatl gave me these bills.
Oh, so he is the money collector.
Sure, he is in charge of these matters. Ore mining or other mineral mining on a planet or on a star is only carried out by us in an extreme emergency, because this process is tantamount to the destruction of the star or the planet.
Contact Report 49.
For my part, I will bring a healing device and let both your ribs heal.
Mr. Bertschinger and Mr. Schutzbach are waiting for me at the pistol range.
Sure, but I will influence them and tell them that you were brought home by me.
How are you going to do that?
I am talking about clues to them.